Hello, guys. So I just spoke with the organizers, and they told me that I have a special mission today, just to warm you up after the lovely lunch you had. So let's see how well I do. It's also a double mission because I've been introduced as the first Polish speaker here at this stage. So I don't know what it means, but I know what I want to speak about. Carl Rogers, the father of humanistic psychology, is a great inspiration for me. And I have this quote, which is, it's more about the journey than the destination. I've been doing this talk a couple of times all across the world. I think after this one, I'll just retire it. But I thought about it as a bit of a rant. There's a lot about automation and testing today and tomorrow. But this one will be less about the practical aspects that you can just take away, and more about maybe challenging your thinking. Maybe trying to, as Jerry Weinberg sadly departed this year and mentioned today, once wrote, that the consultant is like a jiggler, someone that jiggles the thoughts. So it's not only static, it's not only rigid, but actually something a bit different. What I want to talk about today is quite dear to me. It emerged from my experience and also my first iterative delivery in 2006. I actually used feature-driven development back then. I didn't know any better and it didn't go quite well, but I definitely learned a lot. And throughout my work, there has been one word. We constantly were speaking about projects. Before we go there, a bit about me. To say it very quickly, I'm the agile guy that works with leaders. People call me an agile coach, an enterprise agile coach, a delivery consultant, an agile transformation lead. Yeah, well, I've got some badges, maybe too many. I've worked with some clients. I shouldn't tell you the stories with some. You may know some yourself. But I would call myself, preferably, a professional, lifelong unlearner. Because for me, it's not important how much I learn, but how much I can actually unlearn at the same time. The challenge with learning is we always get those new concepts. You come to a conference, you hear something exciting and think, yeah, I'm going to apply it. But what happens when you actually have learned something, you've worked with something all your life, all your career, and then you find out it's wrong? By the way, I'm trying to unlearn public speaking. I guess speaking at a conference is not the right way of doing it. Easy to say. So there's something I've learned throughout the years that's really important, but enough about me. I want to know something about you guys. It's a big crowd, isn't it? So I'll maybe do, instead of a dialogue, some show of hands. So who of you considers yourselves a contributor? Someone that actually does something, like a developer, a quality consultant, like a tester, as some people say, or maybe an artist or a BA. Hand up. I shouldn't put my hand up. All right, so who of you considers themselves a leader of a delivery, a project, or maybe a product lead, or maybe just a line manager? Okay, cool crowd. That's amazing. Who of you considers themselves a consultant? Someone that comes in and helps others by telling them it's their problem. Yeah. Good luck, guys. It's a lovely crowd. I'm happy to have you here. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to speak to you. So one thing I've learned throughout my years, and it's quite strange, is that people like to complete things. Who likes to complete things? Me too. And I was wondering, why so? I've read a couple of studies. The one that I really liked was from Harvard in 2016. What they did is, it's quite scientific. They started a charity campaign. to donate some hygienic items and medicine to less privileged countries. What they found after rolling out this campaign over a sample size of 7,000 is they only had around 3 to 5% of a conversion rate from displaying the ad to people actually donating any money. What they did then with the other half of the randomized sample is they've changed it and tweaked it slightly. Instead of choosing an item to donate, like, I don't know, some medicine or some hygienic item, they asked you to complete the global survival kit. And like 1 or 2 items were missing. You know what happened? Their conversion rate has skyrocketed to 21%. People felt the need to complete the kit. As I think many of you feel the need to complete the work that you're doing, or anything basically. I don't know which part of the mammal or crocodile brain it comes from. I've been thinking about it quite a lot, and recently I've been to a meetup about the wondrous subject of self-managing teams. And what I found from the author, and I can't remember his name, I have to look it up, it's basically a company doing or producing aeronautic parts, was that people crave order versus chaos. It doesn't seem that likely when I look at other people's desks. But what I found is people crave security over anxiety. And some people feel that, unfortunately, when something is not done, when we haven't managed to close something, there's always an anxiety that needs to be completed. Someone may come to us and say, hey, when it will be done? It's the most popular question ever. So yes, this talk is about the urge to complete and the negative behaviors that stem from it. We don't always want to complete, actually. In the 2006, and David mentioned, I was quite young, well, not any handsome really, but still full of energy. And a project was like the fancy word for work. It's like laser or design or something. I didn't really know what it was, but it sounded awesome. By the way, do you guys know what a project is? Let me give you an assignment then. Can you pair up with the neighbor closest to you and have a discussion over 2 minutes and try to define what a project is? How about we try that? 2 minutes start now. I want to ask you, what did you come up with? Because probably would take the whole slot. But there are some definitions. And the one prevalent category of a project, the one prevalent quality of it is that it's temporary. It's like everything has to be temporary. It will finish. And well, I like the laughter because everyone asks the question, when it will be done. I found myself at the beginning of my career being really pulled to projects just because everything was a project. It was just this fancy word for work. And I studied it. I got my Prince 2 and PMP, and I thought that I understood the world. But soon I discovered something strange. And it wasn't about discovering Agile. At this point, I was applying the techniques, but all the project management guys told me that, no, don't worry. The Agile stuff is for the team. You're managing the project. I said, okay, well, they must know what they're saying. They're certified and such. Little did I know that actually, throughout thinking in projects, I started perpetuating very interesting behaviors. They started with the constraints. Obviously, a project has a time frame. And everyone wants to know when it will be done. Which means that as a project manager, I don't really care what will be done, as long as it's done. How about the budget? It has a budget. When it runs out, I'm in trouble. So I don't really care what I'm producing as long as I meet my budget. Oh yeah, quality is important too. But hey, I'm done. It's not my problem. It's the operations. So I thought to myself, even though I know it doesn't really work, why am I still pushed towards this behavior? Why am I still considering the budget and especially the time as the main cornerstones of what I'm doing? And then what happened as I was working through those projects, I actually noticed that even though everyone wants them to be finished, no one wants to end their business. I've worked at a consultancy, a software house, and what happened was everyone wanted the teams to be in business. Everyone wanted to get more projects and change requests, and everyone wanted to continue. So why the hell did they ask me to finish it when they actually wanted the work to continue? Why on earth would you like to put yourself out of business? Why on earth would you like to be done? Always perplexed me. You've got this too. Probably you're quite familiar with it, aren't you? Someone just invented it and thinks it's great. I actually think it's a great method of visualizing work. But there's some challenges in it. There's an assumption that everything will move from left to right. Does it have to? There's borders, but there's no arrows. We just make an assumption that all our lives is just to move the stuff over there, to done. And what does it really mean to be done with this piece of paper? Yeah, code committed, tests pass, maybe it's deployed somewhere. So what? So what if it's deployed? And even if you're so great and you have an amazing definition of done, and all the stuff here is being used by users, the moment you put it in done, and the first user uses it, which like rarely happens, it's just started. You've just submitted a feature, you've just submitted a useful piece of software that someone actually appreciates. And the only thing that happened is someone started using it. There's so much value that will be added throughout the full life cycle. There's so much that will happen. Why are we calling it done? It should be called the start or the beginning of the wondrous journey of your feature throughout. That's the jiggling part. Has anyone recognized this image? 2 weeks ago, actually in Scotland, in Lean Agile Scotland, I was actually heckled for this image, but not really, just because a lady said it's actually a shame that this one shows up so rare in the Agile conferences. 1988, I think, and 2 Japanese business school professors published a paper. The paper describes product development that works. The paper is called New Product Development Game. And this is the first time the word Scrum is used. Schwaber and Sunderland actually read this paper and adopted the name and adopted the method that's described there. It's freely available at Harvard Business Review. Go and look it up. But it's just rather interesting, though quite early, as you can see. The thing, however, is the original drawing. You can actually see 3 types of product development. The very traditional one, the one that has the phases slightly overlapping, and the one that's most successful. People often ask me, TK, can you define what Agile is? I usually say to them, well, this is the way we always worked, but somehow we've forgotten. This is the way that probably Walkman, that probably early VCRs were invented. Those successful products that we had at home that were technologically advanced at the time, but they didn't bother with the bureaucracy of waiting one for another. Look it up, an amazing paper. But there's something interesting about the last one. It reminds me of something else. It reminds me of the product life cycle. I don't know if any of you is familiar with the product life cycle. Some of you studied economics, it seems. But the thing is, the product life cycle, and it doesn't really have the magical chasm over here, so sorry for that. But when we introduce something, when we are done, we're just at this stage. It's barely out there. And there's so much that our feature will produce along the full life cycle. There's a guy, Donald Reinerson, that wrote a famous book that's very hard to read, The Product Development Flow, and he introduced a term called life cycle profits. Life cycle profits mean that the value of your feature, of your user story, of your portfolio item that you're delivering should actually be quantified over this whole space. Over the space of the entire product life cycle. Imagine a situation that I had myself. I worked in a sports betting company for a while, and we were developing products that generated prices. You can just go to the bookies and bet on those prices of various games. Throughout doing that, we were actually automating the process of trading. There's always someone behind, a human element of putting those prices in. The game we were playing is how to make a trader, a bookie, to manage an X amount of games so we can hire less of those traders. And those traders really had consumed the budgets. So how could we get ourselves to a better position to save more money? To get those traders to either trade more games or move to different sports. I'm not saying to fire them. What we discovered is the decisions that we're taking during the delivery of the product, like making a button bigger or fitting more on the screen, or maybe introducing some minor functionality, had a profound difference on the ease of use and the ability for the trader to handle more games. If I were to look at, it has to be delivered by then, I would never add those features, despite the fact that throughout the life cycle, they would have tremendous benefit of having them in. Why are people looking at being done? It just amazes me, really. But there is more. This is an example of another bot that I have seen. So this is my friend Tom Reynolds from Credit Suisse. He started implementing a Kanban bot that actually would have some of the aspects of the full life cycle of the product. Starting from the inception, going through all those analysis processes, then basically in progress, like free user stories. It looks kind of okay. It's a decent Kanban board, but there's something still missing. It's like, I thought to myself, well, amazing. And by the way, it's not for stories. It's for portfolio items. Bigger chunks of work that you deliver. So now the question is, how, even if you have mapped all of this, and even if you're managing your work in progress, how can you get anywhere? Well, the thing is, you're missing this. I told you about the traders, have I? Well, who of you is taking part in operating software, in fixing stuff in production, and keeping it alive? Not many of you. You're quite lucky. Well, I'll tell you what. If this were true, many of us would actually participate in it more. The challenge is that the decisions that we make as developers, as QAs, do impact what happens here. It's great if we can just hand the baton off to someone, let them care for it. But the reality is, if you're working in a smaller company, what you get is you're going to own it. You're going to support it. You're going to have sleepless nights because people will call you. I know that being on call is not popular, but how can we actually optimize for operations too? One way of doing this is introducing unnecessary documentation and handoff processes, if you have another department, but you rarely do. And that's the case. How to factor that in? Another one is, why do we launch? Why is it that every time I'm doing something, and when I was doing delivery, I've heard, oh, when is the go live? Why does it make sense? Why are we getting, despite knowing all those wondrous agile techniques, getting ourselves to a position to always having a big launch, to always having a go live date because someone says so? We're in a stage that we can deliver feature by feature. Feature slices, thin slices, MVPs, risky assumptions to test. Everything's there. We know it all, but we still get pressure to launch a full product. We all know what happens next, or before. Why? There's more. So this is what I came up with to trying to mitigate that. In actually the sports betting company I've told you about. How about we change our thinking a bit? How about when we're introducing either features or portfolio items, get off with delivery, try to change the way we think. How about we obviously have a process of qualifying what we want to do? But how about we blur the line? It's actually there, but very thin and gray, the thinnerest and grayest I could make it, to blur the line between delivery and operations. What had happened when I implemented this with the C-level executives to understand the way they manage their investments in software and they manage their products was quite awesome. No longer they asked me, oh, when it will be done so we can start the next thing. Yeah, there has been a pool of services those guys had. And I said, well, if you're introducing a new one, you'll have to end something. It's not that the guys can support an indefinite amounts of services. It's not that your traders can handle it. Limit your operations in progress. And by the way, yeah, you're investing a lot on delivery. You're actually actively getting yourself to deliver something. But as you go more to operations, it's just a bit of a transition. You can always go back if you want to add more features. And the one important statement that you can see here is, when are you done? Are you ever done? Well, you are if you decommission a service. At the end of the life cycle, everything dies. Well, hopefully, we don't want to work with legacy software too long, don't we? It is an interesting one, actually thinking what can happen there. So if there's anything to take away from what I've said over the last half an hour, there's just a few points. Projects. Do we have to call them projects? Are they really projects? I'm not saying projects are unuseful, but if we're doing a product or service, let's call it that. It will definitely benefit everyone. Let's look at the life cycle profits. Let's consider them when making decisions we need to make. And not only when will we be done. And at the end of the day, you remember the Agile board. Maybe, and just maybe, and some do it. Instead of calling it done, call it accepted or approved. It more resembles what it actually is. I think we're over time a bit, but if there's anything that you take away from it, it's just jiggling. It's just think about things differently. Don't buy what people sell you just because they're certified or they're managers. You know how you deliver value, and don't shy away from that. Thanks, guys.
So you said you had to unlearn a few things. Can you say which one was the hardest to unlearn?
Well, okay, that's a bit of a share. I think in my life, especially in my career, I've been a leader to start with. And I'm Polish, coming from Szczecin, so there's some guys from Szczecin that I can see. But it doesn't really matter where I am. But in Poland especially, there's a culture of leadership that's called big man leadership or big woman leadership. I actually believe in equality. And the thing is, you really have to be this huge leader on the stage that drags everything and is basically a locomotive, a steam engine, and can pull everyone. Becoming a servant leader was the biggest journey of my life. Thanks.